The sun gleamed off the polished surface of the private jet as it sat on the runway, ready for departure. The air buzzed with the usual pre-flight preparations. Pilots checking instruments, staff moving luggage, and the faint hum of engines warming up. It was supposed to be a routine flight, a seamless journey like many before. But for Simone Carter, this day would be anything but routine. Simone stepped out of her luxury car, the cool morning breeze brushing against her skin as she adjusted her sunglasses. Dressed in an effortlessly elegant ensemble, she exuded confidence, the kind that came from years of hard work and success. Owning a private jet wasn't just a luxury for her. It was a symbol of everything she had built. A testament to the long nights, the sacrifices, the battles she had fought and won. She strode toward the jet, her heels clicking against the pavement, when a uniformed man suddenly stepped in her path. At first, she assumed it was a simple security check, nothing out of the ordinary. But the way he looked at her, his eyes scanning her as if trying to place her, sent an uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice polite but firm. "Passengers are restricted from this area. This is a private jet." Simone blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "I know," she replied, keeping her voice calm. "It's mine." The man's eyebrows raised slightly, but his expression didn't change. He didn't step aside. Instead, his gaze flicked toward two men standing nearby, both dressed in sharp suits, both exuding the kind of arrogance that suggested they were used to being in control. One of them smirked, exchanging a glance with the other before turning his attention back to Simone. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," one of them said smoothly, his tone dripping with condescension. "This jet doesn't belong to you." Simone's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the unmistakable rush of anger. She had dealt with moments like this before, times when people underestimated her, questioned her, dismissed her. She had risen above every single one. But this was something else. A brief silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. The staff members around them had stopped what they were doing, sensing this shift in energy. Eyes were on her now, watching, waiting. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "I don't think you understand," she said, her voice unwavering. "My name is Simone Carter. This is my jet, and I don't need permission to board it." The smirking man chuckled, shaking his head as if amused. "That's a nice story," he said. "But I think you should leave before this gets." Before he could finish, Simone pulled out her phone, tapping a few buttons before turning the screen toward them. Her name, clear as day, was listed as the owner of the aircraft. The smirk on the man's face faltered, but he recovered quickly, exchanging another glance with his companion. "That doesn't prove anything," he said, though his voice lacked the same confidence as before. Someone could feel the frustration bubbling inside her, but she refused to let it show. Years of experience had taught her that power wasn't just in words, it was in composure, in knowing when to push and when to let silence speak for itself. "Are you denying me access to my own jet?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. The uniformed man shifted uncomfortably. He glanced at the two men, waiting for direction. They weren't so smug anymore. Something about Simone's presence, her certainty, was making them uneasy. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the distant roar of another plane taking off and the rustle of the wind sweeping across the tarmac. Then something shifted. A voice crackled through the radio, clipped to the uniformed man's belt. He reached for it, listening intently before his posture stiffened. His gaze flickered toward Simone, then back at the two men. Whatever he had just heard, it had changed everything. Simone narrowed her eyes. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she could feel it. The energy had shifted, and the story was far from over. The tension on the tarmac was almost suffocating. Simon could see the slight hesitation in the uniformed man's eyes as he listened to the voice on the other end of his radio. His grip tightened around the device, his jaw clenching as if trying to process what he had just been told. The two men in suits, who just moments ago seemed so sure of themselves, shifted uneasily. Simone folded her arms, watching their reactions closely. She wasn't the kind of woman to back down, especially when she knew she was in the right. For years, she had fought to earn her place in spaces where people like them never expected her to be. And now, here she was, facing yet another challenge. The uniformed man cleared his throat, but before he could speak, one of the suited men stepped forward. "Look, I don't know what game you're trying to play here, but this is obviously some mistake," he said, his tone carrying a forced confidence. "Maybe you rented the jet once and got confused." Simone let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Confused?" she echoed. "Do I look confused to you?" She held her phone up again, scrolling through official documents, ownership papers, registration details, everything proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the jet belonged to her. She had worked too hard, built too much, to let anyone dismiss her like this. The uniformed man hesitated, then finally spoke. "Miss Carter," he said, carefully choosing his words, "I just received confirmation that your name is, in fact, on the ownership documents. But there seems to be another name attached as well. Someone claiming to have authority over access to the jet." Simone's eyebrows lifted slightly. Another name? That was impossible. She had sole ownership, and the only people with clearance were her trusted employees. "Who?" she demanded. The man glanced at his radio, as if double-checking, then sighed. "A Mr. Reynolds." Simone's stomach tightened. She knew exactly who that was. Adrian Reynolds, an investor she had briefly worked with when acquiring the jet. The deal had been simple. He had helped her navigate some of the complex logistics of the purchase, but the jet was hers outright. There was never any shared ownership. If he was claiming otherwise, then something wasn't right. She took a deep breath, keeping her expression neutral. "That's interesting," she said, "because Adrian Reynolds has no legal claim to this jet." The suited men looked at each other. One of them spoke up, his voice dripping with feigned politeness. "Well, if that's true, I'm sure this can be sorted out. No need to make a scene." Simone narrowed her eyes. That was exactly what they wanted, for her to step aside quietly while they figured out a way to manipulate the situation. But she wasn't going to let that happen. She turned back to the uniformed man. "Let me make this clear," she said. "I don't need permission from anyone to board my own jet. If there's an issue, then I suggest you call the Aviation Authority, because I'd love to hear their explanation for why I'm being denied access." There was a beat of silence. The weight of her words settled over them. The uniformed man seemed to consider her suggestion, shifting uncomfortably. He wasn't the enemy here, he was just following instructions. But whose instructions exactly? Before anyone could respond, another figure emerged from the terminal, a middle-aged man in a crisp suit, walking toward them with purpose. Adrian Reynolds. Simone felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't let it show. He approached with a practiced smile, one that was meant to disarm, but she had seen it before. She knew exactly how he operated, charming when it suited him, ruthless when it didn't. "Simone," he greeted smoothly, as if this were some friendly coincidence. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." Simone met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "That's funny," she said. "Because I wasn't expecting to be stopped from boarding my own jet." Adrian let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Ah, there seems to be some confusion. You see, the jet's paperwork is a little complicated." "No, it isn't," Simone interrupted. I own this jet. The only confusion here is why you're trying to make it seem like I don't. Adrian sighed, as if this were an inconvenience rather than a blatant lie. Look, I was just trying to protect our shared interests. There were some last-minute adjustments to the ownership agreement that I had to oversee. Simone's patience thinned. There are no shared interests, Adrian. Whatever adjustments you're talking about don't exist. I have full ownership. The two suited men stood behind Adrian, clearly on his side. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attempt to take what was hers. Simone took a step closer, lowering her voice just enough to make sure only Adrian heard. I don't know what game you're playing, she said, but I promise you, you won't win. Adrian held her gaze for a moment, his confident facade flickering just slightly. He wasn't expecting her to stand her ground like this. The uniformed man cleared his throat. Mr. Reynolds, do you have documentation proving you have authority over this jet? Adrian hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Simone smiled. I'll wait. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at his two companions, then back at Simone, his mind clearly racing. The silence stretched. The staff around them exchanged uncertain glances, sensing that something was off. Finally, Adrian exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening. I don't have it on me, he admitted. Simone raised an eyebrow. How convenient. The uniformed man looked between them, his duty clear now. Then I have no reason to deny Miss Carter access to her jet, he said firmly. Adrian forced a tight smile, but Simon could see the frustration in his eyes. He had lost this round. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the jet, the staff immediately stepping aside. The tension in the air remained, but she had made her point. Still, as she ascended the steps and stepped inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Adrian had tried to take what was hers, and he had failed. But something told her he wasn't done trying. As Simone settled into her seat inside the jet, she took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline settle. The interior was just as she had left it, polished leather seats, the faint scent of fresh flowers from the last cleaning crew, and the subtle hum of the engines on standby. Everything about this jet was a symbol of how far she had come, how much she had built. And yet, someone had still tried to take it from her. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Marcus Hayes, her lawyer and longtime business advisor. If Adrian thought he could manipulate some paperwork behind her back, he was sorely mistaken. Simone, Marcus answered almost immediately. I was just about to call you. Something weird came up in the registry this morning. Simone's grip tightened on her phone. Let me guess, she said. Adrian Reynolds. Marcus exhaled sharply. Yeah. His name popped up in an ownership update request, but it didn't go through because it wasn't authorized by you. That's why I was calling. I wanted to make sure you were aware. Simone's heart pounded with frustration, though she kept her voice steady. Oh, I'm aware. He just tried to stop me from boarding my own jet. There was a pause on the other end. You're kidding me, Marcus finally said. I wish I was, she replied. I need you to find out exactly what he's trying to pull. If there's any way he thinks he can legally challenge my ownership, I want to know about it. Already on it, Marcus assured her. But be careful, Simone. Adrian doesn't play fair. If he's making moves like this, he's got something planned. Simone already knew that. Adrian was never one to make a scene unless he thought he had an angle. The fact that he had confronted her at the airport meant he was testing the waters, seeing how much resistance he'd face. As she ended the call, Simone gazed out the jet's window. The two suited men were still talking with Adrian outside, their gestures sharp, their expressions tense. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she knew it wasn't over. Adrian wasn't the type to take a loss quietly. A knock on the cockpit door drew her attention. The pilot, a trusted employee she had worked with for years, peeked inside. "Everything okay, Ms. Carter?" Simone offered a small smile. "Not exactly, but we're taking off anyway." The pilot nodded and disappeared back into the cockpit. Moments later, the engines roared to life, and Simone felt the familiar pull of acceleration as the jet began its taxi down the runway. But even as they lifted into the sky, leaving Adrian and his schemes behind, she knew this fight was just beginning. Back on the ground, Adrian watched the jet ascend with narrowed eyes. The two men beside him, James and Victor, high-level consultants who had been working with him for years, exchanged uneasy glances. "That didn't go as planned," James muttered. Adrian clenched his jaw. "No, it didn't. But it's not over." Victor exhaled, shaking his head. "She's got the legal documents, Adrian. You can't just rewrite history." A slow smirk tugged at the corner of Adrian's lips. "I don't need to rewrite history. I just need to make her doubt the future." James frowned. "What does that mean?" Adrian turned to them, his expression cold and calculating. "Simone built a name for herself, but she's not invincible. She's got investors, contracts, partnerships. If we can shake their confidence, make them believe she's reckless or involved in something messy, they'll start backing away. And once they do, she won't be as untouchable as she thinks." Victor shifted uncomfortably. "So, what? We spread rumors. Make her look bad." Adrian's smirk widened. "Something like that." Meanwhile, thousands of feet in the air, Simone reclined in her seat, scrolling through her emails. Most were routine business messages, but one subject line made her pause. Asterisk asterisk urgente. Potential contractee breach. Investigation asterisk asterisk. Her stomach tightened. Clicking the email open, she scanned the contents. A major corporate partner was reviewing recent concerns regarding her ownership structure and business practices. It was vague, but the implications were clear. Someone was trying to stir doubt. She sat up straight, jaw tightening. Adrian was wasting no time. With quick precision, she forwarded the email to Marcus, adding a single message. Asterisk asterisk Adrian is already making moves. We need to shut this down asterisk asterisk. She set her phone down and exhaled. This wasn't just about the jet anymore. Adrian was going after her reputation, her business, her entire legacy. And if he thought she was just going to let that happen, he had no idea who he was dealing with. Simone tapped her fingers against the armrest, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Adrian had struck fast, just as she expected, but what she didn't know yet was how deep this ran. A vague email about a contract breach investigation was just the start. If he had already gotten to one of her corporate partners, there was no telling what else he had planned. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Asterisk asterisk, we need to talk. Something bigger is happening. Asterisk asterisk. She immediately called him. Tell me. Marcus sighed on the other end. It's worse than we thought. I pulled some strings, talked to people behind the scenes. Adrian has been in meetings all week with investors, lawyers, even media contacts. He's spreading a narrative that you've been mismanaging your assets, that there are questionable details about your business dealings. Nothing specific, just enough to plant doubt. Simone's jaw tightened. That's how he operates. He doesn't need proof. He just needs whispers. That's not all, Marcus continued. I checked the registry again. Adrian tried to submit another request for ownership claims. It got flagged again, but it's clear he's not stopping. Simone ran a hand through her hair. Adrian was building a case, little by little, against her. If enough people started questioning her legitimacy, it wouldn't matter that she was in the right. Perception was everything in business. And Adrian knew exactly how to manipulate it. A notification popped up on her phone. Another email. This one from a journalist she had worked with before, someone she trusted. Asterisk asterisk Simone, I'm hearing some troubling reports about you. Can we talk asterisk asterisk? She exhaled slowly. He was already pulling the media into this. This wasn't just an attack on her business. It was an attack on her entire reputation. Before she could even process it, the flight attendant approached her. Miss Carter, we just received word from air traffic control. There's an issue with your flight clearance for your next destination. Simone frowned. What kind of issue? We're looking into it, but apparently there's been a report of irregularities in the aircraft's registration. They need further verification before allowing you to land as planned. She felt her stomach drop. Adrian wasn't just trying to take her jet, he was trying to ground her. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, forcing herself to stay calm. She had worked too hard, built too much to let someone like Adrian dictate what she could or couldn't do. Simone pulled up Marcus's contact and called him again. He's trying to block my flight clearance now, she said before he could even greet her. A pause. Then a sharp breath. He's pushing harder than I expected. We need to move fast. Simone glanced out the window. The clouds stretched endlessly below them, the world moving on while she sat in a battle that no one could see. She knew what Adrian wanted, to isolate her, to make her feel like her empire was slipping through her fingers. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Marcus, she said, her voice steady, determined. I need you to find out exactly who Adrian has been talking to. Every investor, every journalist, every legal contact. He's trying to pull the rug out from under me, and I need to be 3 steps ahead. I'm already making calls, Marcus replied. But Simone listened to me. He's betting on you making a mistake. He's pushing you into a corner so you'll react emotionally. Simone knew that. Adrian thrived on chaos, but she had faced worse before. I'm not going to panic, she said firmly. I'm going to win. The jet continued soaring forward, but Simone knew that down on the ground, a storm was already brewing. Adrian had set his traps. Now it was her move. Simone's grip tightened on her phone as she stared out the jet window, her mind racing. She had expected Adrian to play dirty, but this was an all-out war. He wasn't just trying to take what was hers. He was trying to erase her entirely. If he was blocking her flight clearance, that meant he was working with someone inside the system. This wasn't just a business rivalry anymore. This was sabotage at the highest level. Her phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Simone Carter. A deep voice on the other end. Smooth, calm. Miss Carter, you don't know me, but I know you. And I know you're being set up. Simone's heart pounded. Who is this? A pause. Then I work in aviation compliance. Let's just say I've seen some requests come through regarding your aircraft. You're being targeted, and not just by Adrian. There's someone bigger backing him. Simone's stomach dropped. She had assumed Adrian was acting alone, but if he had someone else pulling strings for him, that changed everything. What do you want? She asked, keeping her voice steady. To give you a warning, you need to move fast. Your jet's registration is being challenged again, and if it goes through, they'll ground you permanently. You won't just be denied boarding this time, you won't be able to fly at all. The line went dead. Simone sat back, gripping her phone tightly. She had faced challenges before, but this was different. Someone with real power was behind this. Someone who wanted her out of the game entirely. Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts as she called him again. "Simone, I found something." "Tell me." "There's a paper trail. Adrian's been moving funds, big ones. Not just to legal teams, but to lobbying groups, people who have the kind of influence that could permanently blacklist you from the industry." Simone exhaled sharply. "He's not just trying to steal my jet. He's trying to destroy my entire brand." "It gets worse," Marcus said. "I checked the records. The same people backing him. They have ties to one of the biggest private aviation firms in the country. If they succeed, they'll do more than take your jet. They'll claim you were never qualified to own one in the first place." Simone clenched her fists. This wasn't just a smear campaign. It was an attempt to rewrite history. The flight attendant returned, a concerned look on her face. "Miss Carter, we just received a priority communication. The airport has denied your landing request. They're citing pending investigations into your aircraft's ownership." Simone's pulse pounded in her ears. They were shutting her down in real time. Her mind raced. If she let them win this round, they'd take everything. But she wasn't going to roll over. She had worked too hard to let someone rewrite her story. She turned back to Marcus. "Find me everything. Who Adrian is working with, where the money is coming from. I want names, connections, everything." Marcus hesitated. "Simone, you realize what you're up against. These people don't just play hardball. They ferry people like us." Simone's gaze hardened. "Then we dig first." She ended the call and stared out at the endless sky ahead. They wanted her grounded. But Simone Carter wasn't the type to stay down. The real fight was just beginning. Simone gripped the armrest of her seat as the jet remained grounded on the tarmac. Every second that passed felt like a countdown to disaster. Adrian and his backers were closing in, and if she didn't act fast, she wouldn't just lose her jet. She'd lose everything she had built. But she wasn't the type to sit back and accept defeat. She had worked too hard, fought too many battles, to let someone rewrite her story. Her phone buzzed again. "Marcus." "Simone, I got the documents," he said, his voice urgent. "I traced the money. Adrian isn't just being backed by a private aviation firm. He's tied to an international investment group, one that's known for forcing takeovers and wiping out competition." Simone inhaled sharply. "They want more than my jet. They want my entire business." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "If they pull this off, they'll claim you were never fit to own a fleet, let alone run an aviation brand. They'll take your clients, your licenses, everything. This isn't just a smear campaign. It's a corporate coup." Simone's mind raced. Adrian wasn't smart enough to orchestrate this on his own. He was just a pawn. But that meant someone bigger was calling the shots. And if she was going to fight back, she needed to hit them where it hurt. She turned to the flight attendant. "Get me the airport director on the phone." "Now." Minutes later, the screen in front of her flickered to life, revealing the face of the airport's director, a stern-looking man in his 60s. "Miss Carter," he greeted, his tone carefully neutral. "I understand there's a dispute regarding your aircraft's clearance." Simone didn't waste time. "This isn't a dispute, it's a takedown attempt. And I have the proof." She forwarded the documents Marcus had uncovered. These showed direct payments to regulators, to legal teams. Every move being made to block my flight has been orchestrated by Adrian and his financial backers. The director's expression didn't change, but Simone saw the flicker of concern in his eyes as he scanned the files. "These are serious allegations." "They're facts," Simone pressed. "And if you don't lift this restriction immediately, I will make them public." A tense silence. Then finally, the director sighed. Miss Carter, you understand the kind of people you're dealing with. I do, Simone said, and I'm not afraid of them. Another pause. Then finally, I'll clear your flight. Simone exhaled, tension releasing from her shoulders. Good, do it now. The line cut out, and within minutes, her pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Miss Carter, we've been given clearance. Ready for takeoff. But just as she felt the rush of victory, another voice interrupted. Adrian. His name flashed across her screen. Against her better judgment, she answered. Simone, he drawled, his voice dripping with false amusement. I have to say, I underestimated you. Big mistake, she shot back. He chuckled. You think you won, don't you? That getting your jet in the air means you've beaten me. I don't think, Simone said, her voice steady. I know. There was a pause. Then with a smirk in his tone, Adrian said, check your inbox. Simone opened her email, and what she saw made her stomach drop. A leaked report, one that falsely claimed she had committed financial fraud to acquire her fleet. It was a lie, but the media wouldn't care about that. The headlines would spread like wildfire, and by the time the truth came out, the damage would already be done. Adrian's voice was smug. Even if you fly today, you won't be flying for long. Simone clenched her jaw, refusing to let panic take hold. She had spent her entire career proving people wrong, and she wasn't about to stop now. She took a steady breath. Thanks for the warning, Adrian. Now let me give you one. Adrian laughed. Oh, this should be good. Simone leaned forward. You and your backers underestimated me. Again, and while you were busy trying to shut me down, I was busy too. She pressed a button on her laptop, sending another set of documents out. To the press, to regulators, to the people Adrian answered to. Adrian's laughter stopped. I traced the money too, Simone said, and I found more than just your little scheme to steal my jet. I found offshore accounts, illegal payments, everything your investors have been trying to keep hidden. Silence. Simone smiled. By this time tomorrow, your backers won't just be backing out. They'll be under investigation. Adrian's voice was tight. You think you're untouchable. No, Simone said simply. I just know how to fight. The line went dead. The jet's engines roared to life, and as the aircraft lifted into the sky, Simone exhaled. She wasn't just taking off. She was rising above all of it. And she wasn't looking back. As Simone's jet soared through the sky, she leaned back in her seat, finally allowing herself a moment to breathe. The battle wasn't over. There would still be fallout, headlines, and attempts to discredit her. But for the first time in days, she felt something close to peace. She had taken a stand, and more importantly, she had won on her own terms. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Marcus. Asterisk, asterisk, it's happening. The media is running the real story. Adrian's investors are panicking. Asterisk, asterisk. She clicked on one of the news links he sent. The headline was bold and clear. Asterisk, asterisk, aviation scandal uncovered. Illegal takeover attempt exposed. Asterisk, asterisk, the article laid out everything. How Adrian and his backers had tried to orchestrate a fraudulent smear campaign. How they had bribed regulators, and most importantly, how Simone had fought back with undeniable evidence. She smirked. This wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about something bigger. Too many people like Adrian had been getting away with things like this for too long, thinking they could rewrite history to serve their own interests. But today, Simone had proved that the truth still had power, when you had the courage to stand by it. A soft knock at the cabin door brought her out of her thoughts. The flight attendant stepped in, smiling warmly. Miss Carter just wanted to check if you need anything. Simone thought for a moment, then shook her head. No, I think I'm good. She really was. The attendant nodded and disappeared back into the main cabin. Simone turned her gaze toward the window, watching the clouds stretch endlessly below. This jet wasn't just a luxury or a status symbol. It was a symbol of everything she had built from the ground up. People had doubted her from the beginning, but she had turned every doubt into fuel. And now she wasn't just flying, she was soaring. Back on the ground, the fallout from Adrian's scandal spread fast. By the time Simone landed at her destination, news cameras were already waiting. She had expected that. What she hadn't expected was the wave of support flooding in from people who had followed the story. Messages poured in, business leaders, entrepreneurs, even everyday people who saw her as an inspiration. One message stood out in particular, from a young woman named Jasmine. *** Simone, I've been following your journey for years. Seeing you fight back has given me the courage to go after my own dreams. Thank you for showing us what's possible. ***. Simone smiled, her chest tightening with emotion. She had always wanted to make an impact beyond just business, and this was proof that she had. But there was still one last thing to take care of. She walked toward the waiting press, cameras flashing as she approached. A reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. Miss Carter, after everything that's happened, what's your next move? Simone didn't hesitate. I keep building. I keep flying. And I make sure no one else goes through what I just did. She meant every word. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about making sure the next generation of entrepreneurs, especially women and people of color, never had to fight the same battles alone. She was going to open doors, ***, and make sure they stayed open, ***. As she stepped into the waiting car, Marcus called again. So you realize Adrian's done for, right? His investors dropped him, and the board is pushing him out of his own company. Simone exhaled. He did it to himself. Marcus laughed. True. But still, I'd say you played a pretty big part in that. She shrugged. I just made sure the truth got out. And that was enough. As the car pulled away from the airport, Simone looked ahead, already thinking about what was next. She had spent years proving herself. Now she was done proving. It was time to lead. And nothing, ***, nothing, ***, was going to stop her.